just fed up to here?
Nope.
Huh? What are you waiting for? Start the video.
I'm fed up to here.
Oh, I get it. You saw the P word in the title and now you expect something from me. I'm not saying it. You can't make me. I 100% refuse. And this isn't going to turn into some lame sitcom joke where I say that I won't and then I end up saying it. I'm straight up not doing it. Sorry to ruin your fun. What? Oh, for fuck's sake. I'm not saying it. Get me out of here before people click off the video. We have a hard enough time with viewer retention as it is. I'm not doing it. Oh, so it's like that? Well, I can sit here all day. Alright, fine. Play the video. I'm only doing this for the sake of moving on. Pizza time. Do you like pizza? I'm guessing a good majority of you would say yes. Although it didn't originate in the States, pizza's been adopted as one of the quintessential American foods. With something so iconic, you may wonder, how could pizza get any more American? Well, mass-produce them using processed ingredients and sell them frozen, of course. Frozen pizzas have a bit of a reputation nowadays, never quite as satisfying as their handmade restaurant counterparts. This can honestly be said about most frozen food though, but that wasn't always the case. Today, I want to guide you on another journey into the bizarre tale we call human history, and take a look at a story of fortitude, triumph, and thousands of frozen pizzas. And if you're new here and like the video, make sure to subscribe so you can stay up to date. So come with me, and do stay close. It can be quite easy for travelers to find themselves stranded in the Empyrean ether of history. This is the saga of the Great Michigan Pizza Funeral, a Fabrinian epic. As is with a large portion of American history, we must start at the end of the Second World War. World War II displaced a lot of families in its wake, and the family of Ilario Mario Fabrini was no different. Fabrini and his wife Olga came to the US in the hopes of living out that great American dream as so many other immigrants before them had desired. However, times were tough as countries were still recuperating from the Second Great War, making the idea of a solid living a pipe dream for most citizens, especially immigrants. Facing financial hardships and unstable work placements after a brief stint in the US Army, Fabrini and his wife eventually settled in the small town of Ossining, Michigan. At the time, Ossining bordered on village status as it had an estimated population of around 1,800 people. Though times were rough, Fabrini and Olga were quick to make friends with many of the locals, often showing their hospitality by making traditional Italian-style pizzas, a practice Mario Fabrini learned growing up in Croatia. Now, as such a small town, Ossining was often viewed as a transit checkpoint, one of the several small, insignificant locations travelers would pass through while driving to other locations. With this reputation, the surrounding area was home to a few scattered inns and motels for tired drivers to rest. And you may be thinking to yourself, why do I need to know this? Well, some of the friends Fabrini made when he came to the town were local innkeepers and those who worked in the hospitality industry. A few of these folks saw Fabrini's talent for making pizzas and began offering them as food options to their traveling guests, an opportunity Mario was quick to seize. With Olga's help, the Fabrinis adapted the more traditional recipe to appeal to their American consumers. As the reputation of Fabrini's pies began to spread around the area, the once struggling immigrant expanded his venture by packaging and freezing his product to sell to customers. And thus, the frozen food business of Papa Fabrini's Pizzas was born. With this new direction for his pizza business netting a larger profit, Fabrini was finally able to save a portion of his money, which he later spent on the purchase of a production factory, hiring 22 employees to aid in the creation and distribution of these frozen pizzas. At its height, Fabrini's Pizza saw an average output of 45,000 pizzas a week. Though we very rarely look upon modern frozen foods as being of a high quality, during this time there was less corner cutting and higher quality control for the still relatively new production process. Fabrini took pride in his pizzas, along with how many different options he offered his customers, stating, quote, We're not like a big nationwide outfit which just puts on pepperoni and cheese. We got a fine product with hams and mushrooms and whatever anybody wants." End quote. And while it was true that his wide range of selections did benefit both his bottom line and customers, it would eventually prove to be the downfall of his business's reputation. Similar to most businesses, Fabrini received his ingredients for pizzas from different wholesale distributors, with the Papa's supplier of choice being Tolono Pizza Products. The Chicago-based pizza ingredient chain shipped canned and packaged ingredients to a variety of locations in the Midwest. Yet, pulling back the proverbial veil of the supply chain, even Tolono Pizza Products received their distributed items from other suppliers who canned and packaged the ingredients. One such supplier to TPP was the United Canning Company of East Palestine, Ohio, a factory that specialized in canning fruits and vegetables, among other miscellany. Being, of course, a pizza ingredient wholesaler, TPP was only interested in some of the UCC's offerings. In particular, mushrooms. The supply chain from the United Canning Corporation to Tolono Pizza Products to Papa Fabrini's Pizzas continued for several years without any hiccups or issues. That is, until one morning in the early winter days of January 1973. Employees working the line at the United Canning Company noticed something strange among the cans of mushrooms being pushed out of the assembly machines. They were deformed and swollen. The employees were quick to report this issue, as swollen cans were almost always an indicator for contaminated or spoiled ingredients. With the incident reported to the Food and Drug Administration, samples were taken from the cans in question, and distribution of all mushrooms was put on hold. As the FDA ran tests on the suspected mushrooms, the United Canning Company was left trying to deduce what could have been the cause of the contamination. After much inspection and deliberation, the UCC came to the conclusion that the new automated canning system was likely to blame. A few months prior, the UCC had made the switch from employee-driven hand canning procedures to automated machine canning, a process already notorious for being considerably less sanitary than manual labor. Following the deduction of probable cause, the FDA had wrapped up their tests into the contaminated mushrooms. Feeding the ingredients to lab rats and observing their symptoms and, later, deaths, the FDA came to the conclusion that the mushrooms were contaminated with the bacterium Clostridium botulinum. On its own, Clostridium botulinum could be considered a non-issue. That is, if it weren't for the neurotoxin it naturally produces, botulinum, better known as Botox. When botulinum toxin is released into an individual's body, it leads to the rare and often fatal illness botulism, which includes symptoms such as violent vomiting and diarrhea, loss of or disruptions of control in the central nervous system and muscles, and decreased blood pressure. Contrary to popular belief, a majority of deaths by botulism aren't caused by the vomiting or intestinal issues, but rather by internal carbon dioxide poisoning. As botulism affects muscles by weakening them and reducing frequency of movement, respiratory muscles used for breathing are not employed as frequently as they should be while ill. If not aided by other means, such as a ventilator, a person whose respiratory system is affected by the illness may not be able to exhale out all the carbon dioxide they produce during the process of breathing and gas exchange. This leads to an excess buildup of carbon dioxide in the body, eventually leading to suppression of brain function, and later, death. The botulism tests now complete, the FDA hurried to contact UCC and warn them about the spoiled mushrooms, as the United Canning Company ordered a recall on all cans of mushrooms distributed in that code line the past month. On February 19th, the FDA directly contacted Papa Fabrini to inform him of the ongoing incident. Quote, "All I could think was, oh my god, not me, what if somebody gets sick or dies from this?" Fabrini stated in an interview with the Connellsville Daily Courier, recalling his initial reactions to the breaking news. To be doubly sure a recall was in order for the pizzas in particular, Fabrini gave up samples of his frozen pizza to the FDA for similar lab tests, which yielded similar results. Having spent the past 9 years building up his business's reputation, Mario Fabrini knew that once word of the contamination and his business's connections to UCC were publicized, he would have to undergo serious damage control. Taking preemptive measures, Fabrini got to working on calculating the total number of pizzas that were possibly contaminated with the tainted mushrooms, along with how profits would be affected by a mass recall. In total, Fabrini estimated that around 30,000 of his frozen pizzas showed risk of contamination, although the press would later erroneously inflate this number well into the 40 to 44,000 range. While the estimated number of bad pizzas was less than the average amount of product the factory was reported to make in a week, Fabrini stated that the business as a whole would lose an estimated $30,000 in manufacturing costs and over $60,000 in total retail value. This approximates to $582,777 in 2022. In the face of this loss, Fabrini was dedicated to proving his loyalty and compassion for his customers, and issued the recall immediately, regardless of revenue loss. Fabrini's records showed by the end of the recall a grand total of 29,188 frozen pizzas had been returned to the manufacturer from local grocery stores and customers. With all the supposedly blighted food rounded up, it would have been easy for Fabrini to move on with his business and continue as if nothing happened, as most manufacturers do. However, Fabrini felt that he still owed his customers more closure than that. He wanted to demonstrate his responsibility and transparency to the community who had supported him since his arrival in the country a decade prior, along with possibly rebuilding his brand's reputation. With haste and hope, Fabrini bought a large plot of land from local farmer Gary Johnson, hollowing it out into an 18-foot deep hole. Papa Fabrini then announced to locals and media sources he was going to host a large event at this plot of land, and invited all of Ossinek to attend on March 5th, 1973. That day, as folks from the small town and even around the county arrived, they were quite surprised by the scene before them. 4 large dump trucks stood perched above the 18-foot hole, the bed of each truck filled to the brim with the cellophane-wrapped frozen pizzas. In jest, Fabrini had themed the event as a funeral for the soon-to-be-disposed pizzas, leading the press to later dub the event the Great Michigan Pizza Funeral. As hundreds of people crowded around the dig site, including Chamber of Commerce members and bank presidents, one guest in particular was called up to read a homily in respect of those who were about to be laid to rest. Yes, although 100 miles out of his way on a trip back from Traverse City, then Michigan Governor William Milliken humored Fabrini's funeral theme before going on to give a speech to those in attendance, commending Fabrini and his customers for courage in the face of tragedy and hardship. As a gesture of goodwill, Fabrini gifted Milliken one of his frozen pizzas before giving the signal to empty the trucks. One by one, the 4 dump trucks unloaded their payload of cold cheese, dough, sauce, and mushrooms into what is still on record as one of the largest grave plots in Michigan. To finish off the mock ceremony, Fabrini approached the plot, a thick layer of compacted dirt separating him and his creation, placing a wreath of red gladioli and white carnations on top, signifying the colors of his now submerged hoard of pizza sauce and cheese. The ceremony had finally concluded, but Fabrini was certain to use the large crowd of people to his advantage, providing the lingering visitors and media with fresh, new pizzas to eat, cooked on site by Fabrini and his wife. At the time, it may have been viewed as an act of hospitality and a thank you to those who attended, but one can't help but wonder if Papa Fabrini was using this crowd as a way to re-bolster his business's blemished reputation. A few attendants were also questioning of the act, with one reporter asking Fabrini if these new pizzas were truly safe to eat, prompting Fabrini to jokingly retort with, "The governor ate a piece and he's still alive." A few months passed since the spectacle, with life going back to normal for most folks in Ossinek. That is, of course, except for Fabrini. Ever since the botulism incident, he struggled to recoup the number of customers he had lost. Discontinuing his frozen mushroom pizzas, his most popular offering, Fabrini tried to roll out different pizzas with new topping selections in the hopes of enticing new customers and drawing back those who abandoned the brand. A less than mild success, Papa Fabrini's frozen pizzas continued to struggle in the wake of the contamination scandal that directly jeopardized his livelihood. Yet, unknown to Fabrini, behind the scenes, the contamination investigation was developing more complicated than he may have initially thought. While the investigation with the contaminated mushrooms had concluded, for undisclosed reasons, the case was reopened and re-examined in a closer light a few weeks prior to the funeral. As part of the reopened case, the mice who had previously died after eating the purportedly contaminated slices of pizza Fabrini donated were studied again. To the surprise and probable embarrassment of the researchers involved, it was found that the mice did not die from botulism, but rather a case of peritonitis, a gastrointestinal infection with similar symptoms caused by internal complications, rather than external foreign bodies. This meant that, although the mice may have died from eating Fabrini's pizza, they died from complications during digestion, which led to peritonitis, rather than succumbing to botulism. Nonetheless, there was still the issue of the bulging, deformed cans that had been found in the factory, a usual sign of contamination. It turns out, according to the United Canning Company, the recently installed automatic canning machines involved in the process had simply been intermittently overfilling the cans of mushrooms, an issue blamed on the calibration of the machinery. Being directly affected by the investigations, Fabrini was contacted as soon as possible and informed about this new discovery, but it was already too late. The funeral was only 2 weeks away, and canceling the event would put even more suspicion and doubt on Papa Fabrini's business. Biting the bullet, Fabrini, as we know, decided to go on with the event. But while he did demonstrate his accountability for an outbreak he now knew he was no longer involved in, Fabrini was planning a way to hopefully bail out his failing business. In spite of the fact that Fabrini said he did not place any of the blame on his suppliers and would continue to purchase ingredients from the wholesalers, only a few days before the funeral, on March 2nd, Ilario Fabrini filed a $1 million lawsuit against Tolono Pizza Products and the United Canning Company. The case, entitled Fabrini Family Foods Incorporated vs. United Canning Corporation, while filed in March of 1973, would not hold a proper jury trial until November 17, 1976. TPP and UCC both attempted to appeal this suit, with two main arguments. The first argument was against Fabrini supposedly not offering sufficiency of proof for his lost profits as part of the, as they carefully worded it, voluntary recall. Fabrini's accountant, unnamed in court documents, testified against this fact, stating that the frozen pizza consumption on the local market dropped from 85% to 55%, losing over $345,000 in profits. The second appeal the two companies attempted was one claiming Fabrini was not able to show any defect in the mushrooms he received, or a causal connection between the, again in their words, voluntary recall, and the profit damages suffered. This second argument was quickly thrown out, as the court observed prior evidence submitted. Proof that the code series on the cans of mushrooms used for Fabrini's pizzas coincided with those accused of being tainted from the factory. The jury trial lasted until December 10th of that year, yet a proper verdict would not be issued until April 18th, 3 years later, in 1979, by the Michigan Court of Appeals. In the end, Fabrini was awarded $211,000, though nearly a third of this money was immediately spent covering the business's legal fees accrued over the past few years. The case of Fabrini Family Foods versus UCC, while perhaps unimportant in the grand scheme to most observers, laid a solid legal precedent for other court cases to come, involving claims of product defects on behalf of suppliers, including Legalo versus Allied Core and Durkee vs. Cooper of Canada Limited. Fabrini himself looked forward to using the remaining award money to, quote, keep the company going for 5 or 6 years, he said in an interview with the Alpena News. Despite remaining optimistic for the future, only a few years later in the early 1980s, on an unknown date, due to unknown reasons, Papa Fabrini's Pizzas ultimately went out of business, with Fabrini selling the remaining assets of his dream for a mere $5,000. As of March 2017, when the Alpina News conducted an interview with Fabrini, he explained how he had since moved to San Diego, California with his wife, and continues to make pizzas for his friends and family at home, including one of his favorite toppings, mushrooms. Though this interview took place 5 years ago, when Fabrini was well into his 90s, I hope wherever Ilario Mario Fabrini is now, he continues to take pride in the hard work and passion he put into his dream, creating a spectacle so unique that, in my opinion, no other recall in history can ever quite live up to it, for it truly was the great Michigan Pizza Funeral.
Now wait a minute, I misspoke. I wouldn't think it. It wouldn't flow.